Millionaire CEO walked in with his fiancée. Heart stopped when he saw his ex receiving graduation degree, holding their son. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. May the heavenly God bless each one of you with endless love, unshakable strength, and a heart that overflows with kindness and grace. May every woman in our family feel honored, respected, and cherished, for she is the foundation of life and the source of endless warmth. May your homes be filled with laughter, your hearts with peace, and your lives with blessings that never end. This Christmas, may joy touch every corner of your life. May love unite us even more, and may we all walk together in harmony, guided by His light. May every challenge turn into strength, every tear into hope, and every prayer into miracles. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." Todd Murphy had learned to live with ghosts, but he never expected to see one walk across a graduation stage holding his son's hand. The university auditorium buzzed with restless energy, packed with families clutching flowers and cameras. Todd sat in the reserved donor section near the front, his business partner Lawrence beside him. They had contributed enough money to name the new engineering building. Their photographs hung in the administrative hall. Success looked like this now: expensive suits, reserved seating, names carved into stone. All the trappings of achievement purchased with money that meant nothing. "You seem distracted," Lawrence observed quietly beneath the dean's opening remarks. Todd's jaw tightened. "Just tired." The lie tasted familiar. He had been lying to himself for years now, moving through days like a sleepwalker, building an empire on foundations of cowardice. Work consumed his hours. Acquisitions and mergers filled the spaces where a real life should have been. He was successful by every measure except the ones that actually counted. But today was different. Today, he had made a choice that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. 3 weeks ago, during another sleepless night in his downtown penthouse, Todd had pulled up the university graduation roster. He told himself he was just curious, just wondering if she had ever finished school after everything that happened. His fingers had trembled as he scrolled through hundreds of names until he found it. Nicola Danielle Carey, Bachelor of Public Health. His heart had stopped. His hands had shaken so badly he dropped his phone. She had done it. Despite everything he had put her through, despite the obstacles he had created, she had finished school. Now the dean was calling names alphabetically. Graduates crossed the stage in their black gowns, accepting diplomas earned through years of sacrifice Todd could barely imagine. His breathing grew shallow as they progressed through the alphabet. Baker, Brennan, Burke, Caldwell. Nicola Carey. Time fractured into pieces Todd could not catch. She appeared from the wings with quiet dignity, her graduation gown flowing as she walked. But she was not alone. A small boy walked beside her, his hand clasped tightly in hers, his miniature suit jacket slightly too big for his thin shoulders. The child moved carefully, each step deliberate, his dark curls catching the stage lights. Todd forgot how to breathe. The boy was young, maybe kindergarten age. His skin was a beautiful deep brown like his mother's. His posture was straight despite obvious nerves. And his face, dear God, his face. Todd saw his own features reflected there with devastating clarity. The exact shape of his eyes, the set of his jaw, the way his small eyebrows drew together in concentration. The auditorium erupted in warm applause. People loved this image. A single mother graduating with her child, perseverance personified. Todd heard none of it. The world had narrowed to that stage, to Nicola accepting her diploma with one hand while refusing to release her son with the other. She smiled down at the boy with such fierce protective love that it felt like a knife between Todd's ribs. She looked different than his memories allowed. Older, yes, but also harder. Refined by fire into something stronger than what he had known. Still heartbreakingly beautiful, But now the beauty had sharp edges, a warning that she had survived what should have destroyed her. Then Todd saw the man waiting at the bottom of the stage. He was tall and powerfully built, wearing medical scrubs under a casual jacket, like he had come straight from work. When Nicola descended with the boy, the man lifted the child effortlessly, settling him against his hip with practiced ease. Then he kissed Nicola. Not a quick, congratulatory peck. A real kiss, deep and genuine, the kind that spoke of years of intimacy and complete trust. That was when Todd saw the ring. The engagement ring on Nicola's left hand caught the lights as she wrapped her arm around the man's neck. Diamond modest, but clearly chosen with care and love. The three of them stood together like a photograph of everything Todd had destroyed: complete family, hard-won happiness, a life built from ashes. "That's her," Lawrence said quietly. Not a question, a statement of fact. Todd could not form words, could not move, could only watch as Nicola's mother Geneva joined them, with tears streaming down her weathered face. Geneva embraced her daughter, then lifted the boy from the other man's arms to cover his face with kisses. The child laughed, that pure sound of joy only children possess, and something cracked inside Todd's chest. More names were called, more graduates crossed the stage toward futures they had earned. The ceremony continued because the world did not stop for private devastation. It never had. "We should leave," Lawrence suggested carefully, noting Todd's white knuckles gripping the armrest. Todd shook his head. He could not move, could not look away from the exit where they had disappeared. His son, their son, the child he had never met, never held, never acknowledged. Walking away, calling another man father. His phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. Vanessa Klein, his fiancée, texting about wedding cake tastings and venue walkthroughs. Their wedding was 8 weeks away, invitations ready to mail, deposits paid. His parents thrilled about the merger of two powerful families, the strategic alliance dressed up as romance. Vanessa was successful, beautiful, ambitious. Everything that looked right on paper. Their engagement made perfect sense to everyone except Todd, who felt nothing when he looked at her. No passion, no connection. Just the grim recognition that he was making the same mistake again, choosing what appeared correct over what was real. But when Todd closed his eyes, he saw Nicola's smile aimed at someone else. Saw his son sleeping against another man's shoulder. Saw the ghost of the life he had murdered rising up whole and healthy and moving forward without any space for him in it. "Todd." Lawrence's voice held warning now. "Whatever you're thinking, don't do it." "I'm not thinking anything. You're thinking about going after her. I can see it in your face. Don't. She's moved on. She's happy. You have Vanessa. You have the company. Let this go." Todd stood abruptly, his chair scraping against floor, loud enough that nearby donors glanced over with disapproval. "I need air." He pushed through the crowded auditorium, ignoring murmured congratulations from other benefactors who recognized his name from the donor wall. Outside, the spring evening felt thick and suffocating despite the gentle breeze. Families gathered in celebration on the lawn, taking photographs, making dinner plans, living normal, happy lives that seemed impossible now. Todd walked until he found empty steps behind the building where no one would see him. He sat down heavily, expensive suit wrinkling against stone, and tried to remember how to breathe around the weight crushing his lungs. When had he become this person? When had he learned to walk away from the only thing that had ever truly mattered? He knew the exact moment, could trace the trajectory of his cowardice back to a single night, a single hospital room, a single choice that had detonated his entire existence. Nicola had been bleeding. The pregnancy, everyone said, was too early, too risky, too complicated. She had called him from the emergency room, her voice small and terrified in a way he had never heard before. "Todd, please come. Something is wrong. I'm scared. The doctors say I might lose the baby." He had driven to Sacred Heart Hospital in a daze, hands numb on the steering wheel. Found her in a curtained bay in the ER, IV in her arm, beautiful face grey with fear and pain. The nurse had been kind but clinical, explaining severe cramping and bleeding, monitoring required. The next day would determine if the pregnancy was viable. Todd had sat in the plastic chair beside her bed while machines beeped warnings and medical staff came and went with sympathetic expressions. The doctor had been blunt, a tired man at shift's end with no time for softening hard truths. High-risk situation, possible miscarriage. We'll monitor closely but understand the next few weeks are critical, no guarantees. And Todd had looked at Nicola, really looked at her, and seen his entire future collapsing. Saw his parents' disappointment, saw his inheritance threatened, saw the partnership at his father's firm evaporating, saw everything he had worked toward dissolving because of one night, one mistake, one complication he had never planned for. "I can't do this," he had whispered. Nicola had turned to him, eyes huge in her pale face, IV tubing trailing from her arm. "What?" "This is too much. I need time to think. I'm not ready for this. Todd, I'm scared. Please don't leave me here alone." But he had. He had stood up from that chair while she begged him to stay, walked out of that emergency room while nurses stared, driven home to his apartment and turned off his phone, told himself he just needed space, just needed hours to process everything. The hours became days. Her calls went to voicemail. Her texts piled up unread. His parents invited him to dinner and he went, sat there eating expensive food while Nicola lay alone in a hospital bed carrying his child. When his mother asked if he was seeing anyone seriously, he said no. When he finally returned to Sacred Heart after 3 days of silence, the nurse told him Nicola had been discharged. Her mother had checked her out, taken her home. When Todd tried calling, her number was blocked. He went to her apartment and found it empty, a for rent sign posted. Geneva refused to tell him where they had gone. Eventually, Todd stopped trying, convinced himself it was for the best, told himself the pregnancy had probably ended anyway, and Nicola just needed space to heal. He went back to work, accepted the partnership, made his parents proud. And the whole time, his son had been growing inside her, being born, learning to walk and talk, living a whole life Todd knew nothing about. Now that child was calling another man father, and Nicola was marrying someone who deserved her. Todd's phone rang. Vanessa. He declined the call and immediately received a text. "Where are you? The wedding planner has been waiting 40 minutes. He stared at her name on the screen, then typed back, "Cancel it." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. His phone rang immediately. He let it go to voicemail. The sun was setting now, painting the campus in gold and amber. Families continued departing, cars streaming toward celebrations Todd would never be part of. Somewhere in that exodus, Nicola was probably buckling his son into a car seat. Her fiancé was probably driving them to dinner. They were probably laughing, planning their wedding, building the future that should have been Todd's if he had been brave enough to claim it. Lawrence found him an hour later, still on those steps. "Vanessa called me. She says you told her to cancel the wedding." "I did." "Todd, I can't marry her, Lawrence. I don't love her. I'm not sure I even like her. I'm marrying her because she's what my parents want, what looks right, what makes sense on paper, but I can't do it." "And what, you think you're going to get Nicola back, after what you did, after she built a whole life without you?" Lawrence sat beside him, voice gentler now. "Sometimes the punishment for our mistakes is that we have to live with them, that we have to watch other people be happy in the life we should have had." "I know. Then what are you going to do?" Todd looked at his hands, the hands that had signed away his future, that had turned off his phone while Nicola bled, that had chosen cowardice over courage at every turn. "I don't know yet, but I can't keep pretending I'm fine. I can't keep living like this." "Then figure it out. But don't hurt her again. She survived you once. Let her stay, survived." After Lawrence left, Todd sat alone in gathering darkness and made a decision that terrified him. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had not used in years. The private investigator answered on the second ring. "Raymond Cho." "I need you to find someone," Todd said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I need to know everything about what happened after I left." There was a pause. "This is about a woman." "Yes. You want me to dig up her past. I want you to show me what I destroyed. I want to see every single piece of damage I caused. Can you do that?" Another pause. Then, "It won't be pleasant. I don't deserve pleasant. I deserve to see the truth." 72 hours. I'll send you everything." Todd ended the call and sat in darkness, waiting for judgment he had spent years running from. Somewhere across the city, his son was probably being tucked into bed by a man who had earned that privilege. His son who had his eyes and his mother's strength and another man's last name. And Todd was exactly where he deserved to be. Alone with his ghosts, waiting for the reckoning he could no longer avoid. Chapter 2. The Price of Knowing. The report arrived at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, delivered via encrypted email while Todd sat in his downtown office unable to sleep. He had not gone home since the graduation ceremony 3 days ago, had not answered Vanessa's increasingly furious calls demanding explanation, had not attended the emergency board meeting his father called to discuss his erratic behavior, just sat here in the dark watching city lights and waiting for Raymond Cho to send evidence of his sins. His phone lit up with notification. New email. Subject line: Carey investigation. Complete report. Todd's hands trembled as he opened the attachment. 47 pages, photographs, medical records, financial documents. The systematic destruction of a woman's life laid out in clinical detail for his consumption. He started reading, each word a hammer blow. Subject: Nicola Danielle Carey, born October 19th. Current residence: 2847 Riverside Avenue, apartment 4B. Employment: Community Health Outreach Coordinator, Riverside Medical Center. Annual salary $48,000. Education: Bachelor of Public Health, graduated this spring after 7 years of part-time enrollment. 7 years. Should have taken 4. Todd kept reading, stomach churning. Subject became pregnant during senior year of undergraduate studies. Father of child departed during high-risk pregnancy complications requiring emergency hospitalization. Subject's mother, Geneva Carey, sold personal residence at 1243 Oak Street to cover medical expenses related to pregnancy. Sale price, $195,000. Property had been in Carey family for 32 years. Todd stopped breathing. Geneva's house. The house where Nicola had grown up, where Geneva had planted rose bushes after her husband died, where she had hosted neighborhood barbecues and built memories. Sold to pay for medical bills that existed because Todd had abandoned Nicola in an emergency room. He forced himself to continue reading, even though every word felt like swallowing broken glass. Subject experienced severe preeclampsia at 34 weeks gestation requiring emergency intervention. Emergency cesarean section performed at Sacred Heart Hospital on March 7th. Infant Scott Thomas Carey, born premature at 4 pounds 2 ounces. Spent 17 days in NICU due to respiratory complications and low birth weight. Total medical costs, $243,000. Insurance covered $112,000. Subject and mother Geneva Carey, personally responsible for remaining balance of $131,000. The numbers swam before Todd's eyes. $131,000, more than Geneva's house had sold for. He scrolled down and found payment records stretching back years. Monthly installments of $300, sometimes $400, sometimes just $100, when that was all they could manage. They were still paying it off, still drowning in debt from saving Todd's son's life, while Todd signed contracts and attended charity galas. Subject withdrew from university during final semester due to financial constraints and childcare responsibilities. Resumed part-time enrollment 18 months after giving birth. Worked multiple simultaneous jobs to support child and pay medical debt. Overnight custodian at Riverside Medical Center. Weekend receptionist at dental office. Freelance medical transcription from home. Geneva Carey worked as home health aide despite severe arthritis in both hands to help with childcare and living expenses. Todd's vision blurred. Nicola had scrubbed floors while pregnant. Had typed medical notes at 3 in the morning while their son slept, had built a life from absolute nothing while Todd complained about the stress of managing quarterly reports. Geneva had worked despite hands twisted with arthritis, bathing and feeding elderly patients to earn money for her daughter and grandson. The report included photographs. Todd clicked through them knowing each image would destroy him further. Nicola's old apartment building, paint peeling, bars on windows, trash overflowing from dumpsters. The dental office where she had worked weekends, squeezed between a liquor store and a check-cashing place in a neighborhood where people went because they had no better options. Geneva's hands, gnarled and swollen, still changing diapers for patients because her daughter needed help. Then the hospital records. Scott's NICU stay documented in painful detail. Respiratory distress syndrome, feeding tube, oxygen support, phototherapy for jaundice, day-by-day notes charting a tiny baby's fight for survival, mother present at all times, the note said, sleeps in chair beside incubator, asks detailed questions about every medication and procedure. Father, unknown, unknown, as if Todd had never existed. As if his son had been born from Nicola's will alone, with no biological father to acknowledge or claim him. More photographs followed. Scott as an infant, thin and fragile-looking, tubes and wires attached to his small body. Scott as a toddler, healthier now, but still small for his age. Scott starting kindergarten in clothes that were clearly second-hand, but meticulously cared for, every button sewn tight, every stain scrubbed clean. Then recent photographs, the ones Raymond had taken over the past 3 days, Nicola and Scott at a park, her pushing him on swings while he laughed with pure joy. Scott at school pickup, running into Nicola's arms like she was his entire world. The two of them at a grocery store, Scott helping put items in the cart, both of them counting change carefully to stay within budget. Normal moments, happy moments. A life that had not just survived Todd's absence, but had somehow flourished despite it. Then the man appeared in the photographs. Damian Ross, the report stated. Age 34. Pediatric nurse at Riverside Medical Center, Navy veteran honorably discharged after 8 years of service, no criminal record, no debt, excellent credit. Volunteers with children's hospital programs, teaching CPR and first aid, well liked by colleagues and patients. Has been in relationship with subject for approximately 3.5 years. 3.5 years. Longer than Todd had known Nicola. Longer than Todd had spent thinking about her before convincing himself to forget. The photographs showed Damian with Scott at a baseball game, both wearing matching team caps. Damian at Scott's school for career day, surrounded by children asking questions about being a nurse. Damian teaching Scott to ride a bike, running alongside with patient encouragement. Being everything Todd should have been and never was. The final page of the report contained information Todd had been dreading. Subject and Damian Ross became engaged 4 months ago. Wedding planned for September 12th at Riverside Community Center. Subject's mother, Geneva Carey, is enthusiastic about union, has publicly stated Damian is the son she always wanted. Scott Carey calls Damian Ross dad and appears to have strong, secure attachment to him. Subject appears happy and stable in current relationship. No indication she has any contact with or interest in biological father of child. Recommend client accept situation and move forward with own life. Todd closed the laptop and stood so fast his chair toppled backward. He made it to the private bathroom in his office just before he vomited. his body rejecting the truth it had been fed. When there was nothing left, he collapsed on cold tile and wept for the first time since childhood. He cried for Nicola scrubbing floors while 9 months pregnant, for Geneva selling her home and working despite crippling arthritis, for Scott fighting to breathe in a plastic box, his mother's face the only constant in a terrifying world, for all the birthdays and first words and midnight fevers Todd had missed, for the good man who had stepped into the role Todd abandoned and done it better than Todd ever could have. But mostly he cried for himself, for the realization that he was not the hero of this story arriving to fix his mistakes. He was the villain, the obstacle they had overcome, the cautionary tale Nicola probably told herself about why she should trust Damien, because at least he was not Todd. His phone rang, cutting through his breakdown. His father's name on the screen. Todd ignored it. Voicemail notification appeared. He played it on speaker, his voice echoing in the marble bathroom. "What the hell is going on? Vanessa's father called me. She says you cancelled the wedding. The board is concerned about your mental state. Clients are asking questions. You need to get your act together immediately and call me back. This is unacceptable." Todd deleted the message without responding. His father had been thrilled when Todd left Nicola all those years ago, had called it making the smart choice, had increased Todd's position at the firm as reward for choosing ambition over responsibility. His father's approval had been worth destroying the woman Todd loved and abandoning his unborn child. Another call. Lawrence this time. Todd answered because Lawrence at least deserved that much. "Where are you?" Lawrence asked without preamble. "Office. It's 2 in the morning. I'm aware." Silence stretched. Then, "Did you get the report?" "Yes." "How bad is it?" "Worse than I imagined, and I imagined it would be catastrophic." Todd's voice was hollow, scraped clean of emotion. "She almost died, Lawrence. The pregnancy almost killed her. Scott spent over 2 weeks in the NICU fighting to survive. They've been drowning in medical debt for years. Geneva sold her house, Lawrence, the house her husband built for her before he died, sold it to save my son's life while I was building an empire and pretending none of this existed. And you didn't know any of this." "I didn't want to know. I ran away and told myself she would be fine, that the pregnancy probably ended and she just needed time. I lied to myself for years because the truth was inconvenient." "What are you going to do?" Todd looked at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. Expensive suit rumpled, hair disheveled, eyes red from crying. He looked like what he was, a man who had lost the right to call himself a man. "I'm going to see her." "Todd, no, that's a terrible idea. She's moved on. She's getting married. Your son has a father who shows up for him. What do you think showing up now will accomplish?" "I don't know. But I can't just do nothing. I can't let them disappear into a life I know nothing about." "Why not?" "That's exactly what you did before. You disappeared on them. Why is it different now?" The question hit like a physical blow because Lawrence was right. Todd had walked away, had made that choice deliberately and repeatedly, and now he wanted to barge back in because he felt guilty, because seeing them happy made him realize what he had lost. "I need to apologize," Todd said finally. "I need her to know that I know what I did, that I understand I destroyed everything." "And you think that will make you feel better?" The accusation stung because it was completely true. This was about Todd's guilt, Todd's pain, Todd's need for absolution, just like everything else he had ever done. "No," Todd admitted, "but I have to try anyway." Lawrence sighed deeply. "Then don't go to her house, don't ambush her. If you really want to do this, at least give her warning. Let her decide if she wants to see you. Write her a letter. Tell her you saw her at graduation. Tell her you know about Scott. Ask if she would be willing to meet. And if she says no, you respect that. You leave her alone. Can you do that?" Todd did not know if he could. The urge to drive to Riverside Avenue right now to knock on her door and force her to listen was overwhelming, but forcing Nicola to do anything was what had started this nightmare. "I'll write a letter," he said. After hanging up, Todd sat at his desk with blank paper in front of him for over an hour. How did you apologize for destroying someone's life? How did you fit years of regret into words that would not sound hollow and self-serving? Finally, he began to write, his hand shaking so badly the letters came out jagged and desperate. "Nicola, I saw you at graduation. I saw Scott. I know I have no right to contact you after what I did. I know I lost any claim to you or to our son when I walked out of that hospital room years ago. But I need you to know that I understand now. I hired someone to find out what happened after I left, and I have spent the past few hours reading about every sacrifice you made, every obstacle you overcame, every way my cowardice nearly destroyed you. I am not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve that. I am not asking to be part of your life. You clearly built something beautiful without me. I just need you to know that I am sorry, that I was wrong about everything, that abandoning you is the worst thing I have ever done, and I will carry that weight until I die. If you are willing to meet with me, even for 5 minutes, I would be grateful beyond words. If not, I will respect your decision and never contact you again. Todd." He read it 3 times, hating how inadequate every word sounded, then sealed it in an envelope before he could change his mind. Drove to Riverside Avenue at 3 in the morning and left it in her mailbox, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it. Then he went home to his empty penthouse and waited for judgment he no longer had any right to avoid. Chapter 3. The Confrontation. 4 days passed like torture. Todd existed in a fog of his own making, unable to eat or sleep or focus on anything except his phone. Waiting for Nicola's name to appear, waiting for acknowledgement or condemnation or anything except this suffocating silence. His father showed up at his penthouse on the 3rd day, letting himself in with the spare key Todd had foolishly provided years ago. "What is wrong with you?" His father's voice echoed through the marble foyer. "Vanessa's family is threatening lawsuit. The board voted to suspend you pending psychological evaluation. Clients are pulling contracts. You're destroying everything I built." Todd looked up from where he sat on his couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes. "Everything you built. Not me, you. And you know what? I don't care. Sell the company, fire me. Do whatever you need to do. I'm done pretending any of it matters." His father's face went purple with rage. "This is about that woman, isn't it? The one who got pregnant and tried to trap you. I told you walking away from her was the smart choice. I told you she would ruin your life if you let her. Her name is Nicola, and she never tried to trap anyone. She got pregnant and I abandoned her in a hospital room while she was bleeding and terrified. That's the truth you never wanted to hear. I'm a coward who chose his inheritance over the woman he loved and the child she was carrying, and you rewarded me for it. I saved you from making the biggest mistake of your life? No, you helped me make the biggest mistake of my life, and I hate you for it, almost as much as I hate myself." His father stared at him like he was a stranger. "You're having some kind of breakdown. You need help. I need you to leave, and don't come back. We're done." After his father left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle windows, Todd sat in silence, wondering if burning every bridge was liberation or just another form of cowardice. Either way, it changed nothing. Nicola still had not responded to his letter. On the 5th day, his phone finally rang with an unknown number. Todd answered before the 2nd ring. "Hello?" Silence. Then a woman's voice, hard and cold as winter. "This is Geneva Carey." Todd's heart stopped. Nicola's mother, the woman whose house he had cost. "Geneva, do not speak. Just listen." Geneva's voice could have cut diamond. "My daughter received your letter. She cried for 2 hours after reading it." 2 hours, Todd. Do you understand what that means? You hurt her again. Even your apology hurt her. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "I said do not speak." The command in her voice made Todd's mouth snap shut. "I told Nicola to burn that letter and forget you exist. I told her you don't deserve 5 seconds of her time, let alone a meeting. I told her that you had your chance years ago and you walked away, and now she should let you live with that choice forever. Do you know what she said? Todd could barely whisper. What? She said she needs to see you, one time. To say things she has needed to say for years. So against my better judgment, against every instinct I have, I am calling to tell you where and when. But hear me clearly, Todd Murphy. If you hurt my daughter again, if you say one single thing that makes her cry, if you bring any more pain into her life, I will make it my life's mission to destroy everything you have left. Do you understand me? Yes. Saturday, 10 in the morning, Riverside Park, North Entrance. Nicola will meet you there. Come alone. Do not be late, and do not expect anything from her except what you deserve. The line went dead. Todd sat motionless for a long moment, Geneva's words echoing in his empty rooms. Nicola had cried for 2 hours. His letter, his attempt to express remorse, had only caused more damage. Of course it had. Everything he touched turned to ash. But she had agreed to see him. Why? What could she possibly want to say that a letter could not convey? Unless she needed to tell him face to face exactly how much she hated him. Maybe that was what this was. A chance for her to unleash years of justified rage while he stood there and took it. He deserved that. Deserved worse than that. Saturday morning arrived with agonizing slowness. Todd had not slept more than a few hours total since Geneva's call. He wore jeans and a simple shirt. Nothing expensive or showy. Drove to Riverside Park 30 minutes early and waited near the north entrance, his stomach in knots so tight he thought he might be sick. At exactly 10, he saw her walking up the path. Nicola looked beautiful and untouchable in a simple sundress, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense style, no jewelry except a watch, no engagement ring. She must have left it home deliberately. Her face was composed, but her eyes were hard as stone, years of pain compressed into that single expression. Todd stood up from the bench where he had been sitting, his legs unsteady. Nicola. She stopped about 10 feet away, maintaining distance like he was contaminated. I'm only here because I need you to hear certain things. After today, I never want to see you again. Agreed? Agreed. She took a breath, her hands clenched at her sides so tight her knuckles went white. When you left me in that hospital, I thought I was going to die. Not from the pregnancy complications. From the pain of realizing that the man I loved, the man I thought I was building a life with, valued his comfort more than my life. Do you understand that? I was bleeding and terrified and I begged you to stay with me, and you walked out anyway. Todd's throat closed. He nodded because he could not speak. The doctors stabilized me. I went home with my mother. The pregnancy continued somehow despite everything. I finished that semester in a daze, barely functional, just trying to survive each day without falling apart completely. Her voice remained steady, controlled, but Todd could hear the rage beneath it. Then I started showing. People asked about the father. I told them you had left. The judgment was immediate and brutal. Suddenly I was that girl, the stupid one who got knocked up and abandoned, the one who should have known better. Nicola, I'm so... I did not give you permission to speak. Her words were sharp as knives. You will listen. That is all you will do. Todd closed his mouth, shame burning through him like acid. I had to drop out of school because I couldn't afford tuition and childcare, couldn't work full days because of pregnancy complications. My mother sold her house to pay for my medical bills, the house my father built for her before he died. 32 years of memories sold because I needed emergency surgery and the insurance wouldn't cover everything. Each word was a hammer blow. Todd felt his knees weaken, but forced himself to stay standing, to bear witness to the destruction he had caused. I got a job cleaning offices at night, 8 months pregnant, scrubbing toilets in corporate buildings while you slept in your expensive bed. My mother got work as a home health aide, even though her arthritis was so bad she could barely hold a glass. We did whatever we had to do to survive what you did to us. Tears streamed down Todd's face now, but he made no sound, made no movement to wipe them away. Scott was born 6 weeks early, 4 pounds. He could fit in my mother's hands. They didn't know if his lungs would work properly, if he would be able to eat on his own, if he would have developmental delays from being premature. I sat beside his incubator for 17 days, wondering if my son would survive, wondering if God was punishing me for trusting you. Todd's chest felt like it was caving in, but he forced himself to keep listening, to absorb every word of her justified rage. He survived. And I decided that day that I would give him the best life possible no matter what it took, that he would never feel abandoned, never wonder if he was wanted, never question whether he was loved. So I worked 3 jobs. I went back to school part-time. I did everything humanly possible to build a stable life for him while you built your empire and pretended we didn't exist. She paused, her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. When she continued, her voice was quieter but no less devastating. Then I met Damien. He was Scott's nurse when Scott got pneumonia and had to be hospitalized again. The medical bill for that nearly destroyed us financially. Damien noticed I was sleeping in a chair beside Scott's bed. Noticed I hadn't eaten in days. Noticed I was barely holding it together. He brought me food from the cafeteria. He explained every medication in language I could understand. He was kind when I had forgotten what kindness looked like. Todd's hands shook. He shoved them in his pockets to hide the trembling. We started talking, then dating. He met Scott and didn't run away screaming at the responsibility. He showed up for soccer games and school plays. He helped with homework. He was there when Scott had nightmares. He earned the right to be called father through years of consistent presence. Do you understand? He earned it. I know, Todd whispered, his voice breaking. You know nothing. You know facts on paper, statistics from a report. You don't know what it feels like to hold your dying child and have no one to share that fear with. You don't know what it feels like to work 16-hour days and still wonder if you can make rent. You don't know what it feels like to watch your mother sell her home because of your mistakes. You're right. I don't know. I will never know. And I hate myself for that. Nicola's expression didn't soften. Your self-hatred means nothing to me. I didn't agree to this meeting so you could feel better about your guilt. I agreed because I needed you to understand that my life went on, that I built something beautiful from the ashes you left, that Scott is happy and healthy and loved, that I'm marrying a good man who has never once made me question his commitment. I understand. Do you? Because you sent me that letter like it was some noble gesture, like apologizing would somehow fix the years of damage. But it doesn't fix anything, Todd. It just makes you feel like you tried, like you did something meaningful. It's completely selfish. The accusation hit its mark because it was completely true. The letter had been about Todd's need for absolution, not about what Nicola needed. You're right, he said, his voice barely audible. I am sorry for everything, for leaving you in that hospital, for not being there when you needed me, for Scott, for your mother's house, for every single way I failed you. I know sorry doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't change what happened, but I need you to know that I understand what I did, that I see it clearly now, that I will carry this weight until I die. Nicola stared at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for something he probably didn't have to give. Finally she spoke again, her voice slightly less sharp. I don't forgive you. I want to be very clear about that. I will never forgive what you did to me and Scott. But I also don't want to carry this anger anymore. It's exhausting and it's poisoning me. So I'm choosing to let it go. Not for you. For me. Because I deserve peace after everything I've survived. You do deserve peace. You deserve everything good in this world. Then stay away from us. Let me marry Damien. Let Scott grow up with the family we've built without your interference. Don't disrupt our lives because you suddenly feel guilty after seeing us happy. Can you do that? Every instinct Todd had screamed to say no, to demand a chance to be part of Scott's life, to ask for something, anything, that would connect him to the child he had abandoned. But Nicola's eyes held no room for negotiation. She was giving him a gift, the gift of clear boundaries, the gift of knowing exactly what she needed from him. "Yes," he heard himself say, "I will stay away. I won't contact you again. I will let you live your life without me in it." Something flickered in Nicola's expression. Not gratitude, maybe just relief that he wasn't going to fight her on this. "Thank you." She turned to leave, then paused and looked back at him one final time. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Todd. I really do. But you won't find it with us. We're done." Then she walked away, her sundress flowing in the morning breeze, leaving Todd standing alone in the park with nothing but his ghosts and his overwhelming regret. He watched until she disappeared from sight, then collapsed back onto the bench and buried his face in his hands. She was right about everything. The letter had been selfish. His guilt was useless. His apology changed nothing. But walking away now, truly walking away forever, felt like dying. His phone buzzed. Lawrence calling. Todd answered with shaking hands. "How did it go?" Lawrence asked carefully. "She told me to stay away, to let her marry Damien, to leave them alone completely." "And what did you say?" "I said yes." Silence stretched. Then, "You're really going to walk away? Just like that?" "What choice do I have? She deserves to be happy. Scott deserves to grow up without my mess complicating everything. I owe them that much at minimum." "Okay, then come back to work. Rebuild your life. Try to move forward somehow." But Todd didn't go back to work. He went home and stared at the walls of his penthouse and wondered how you were supposed to move forward when you had just agreed to amputate the only part of yourself that had ever truly mattered. Chapter 4. The spiral 6 weeks passed in a haze of self-destruction Todd barely recognized as his own life. His father had followed through on threats to sell the company, spinning Todd's departure as early retirement due to health concerns. The truth was, Todd had become unemployable, showing up to the few meetings he attended disheveled and distracted, snapping at colleagues, walking out mid-presentation when anxiety overwhelmed him. Vanessa had moved on with impressive speed, her engagement to a partner at her law firm announced in the business section within a month. Todd felt nothing when he read it except vague relief that she had escaped him before he could ruin her life too. She deserved someone who could actually love her instead of just going through motions. Lawrence called every few days with decreasing frequency, their conversations growing shorter as Todd provided less and less to work with. What was there to say? He was drowning in plain sight and everyone could see it, but no one knew how to throw him a rope that he would actually grab. Todd spent his days driving aimlessly through the city, always somehow ending up near Riverside Avenue, even though he had promised Nicola he would stay away. He never got out of his car, never approached her building, just parked down the street where he could see her apartment and sat there for hours like some pathetic stalker, watching for glimpses of the life he was not allowed to be part of. He saw Damien's car there most evenings, saw lights go on in what must be Scott's bedroom, saw shadows moving behind curtains, a family going through normal routines, while Todd sat alone in darkness cataloguing his failures. On a Wednesday afternoon, 6 weeks after the park meeting, Todd found himself parked outside Scott's elementary school. He didn't remember deciding to drive there, didn't remember looking up the address, just found himself sitting across the street when classes let out at 3, watching children stream through doors to waiting parents. Then he saw Scott. His son wore a Batman backpack almost as big as he was, his face serious as he navigated the school stairs with careful steps. A teacher said something that made Scott smile, a bright, beautiful smile that looked exactly like Nicola's. And Todd's chest compressed painfully with the weight of everything he had missed and would continue missing forever. Then Damien appeared, moving through the crowd of parents with easy confidence. He wore scrubs from his shift at the hospital, probably came straight from work to be here for pickup. Scott saw him, and his whole face transformed with pure joy. The boy ran, backpack bouncing wildly, and launched himself at Damien, who caught him effortlessly and swung him up in a practiced motion that spoke of years of doing exactly this. "How was your day, buddy?" Damien asked, settling Scott on his hip. "Bobby took my pencil again, but I didn't hit him this time. I used my words like you taught me." "That's my guy. I'm proud of you for making good choices." They walked toward the parking lot, Scott chattering about his day, while Damien listened with complete attention, asking follow-up questions, making Scott laugh with some joke Todd couldn't hear. Todd watched them get into a modest sedan, watched Damien buckle Scott carefully into his car seat with the efficiency of someone who had done this thousands of times, watched them drive away toward home and dinner and homework and all the normal, beautiful moments of family life. Something broke in Todd then. Some final thread of hope or delusion snapped and left him gasping in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He was not part of this. Would never be part of this. Scott had a father who showed up every single day, who knew his favorite teachers and his problems with Bobby and exactly how tight to buckle the car seat straps. Todd was nothing. A biological accident. A source of genetic material and absolutely nothing more. He drove to a liquor store and bought a bottle of whiskey with shaking hands. Went back to his penthouse and started drinking with the methodical purpose of someone trying to drown things that refused to die no matter how deep you pushed them. His phone rang constantly. Lawrence, his mother calling to berate him about embarrassing the family. His lawyer wanting signatures on dissolution paperwork. He ignored all of it and drank until the room spun, and his thoughts finally blurred enough to provide some relief from the constant ache. Somewhere around his 8th drink, Todd pulled out his phone and stared at Nicola's contact information. The number he had programmed in years ago when they were happy and planning a future, the number he had never deleted despite blocking hers. His finger hovered over the call button. "Don't do it," his rapidly fading sober mind warned. "You promised. You told her you would stay away." But the drunk part of him, the broken, desperate part, didn't care about promises anymore. Didn't care about boundaries or respect or doing the right thing. Just needed to hear her voice. Needed some connection to the only thing that had ever mattered. He called. The phone rang 3 times. Then a male voice answered. "Hello?" "Damien." Of course Damien answered. It was his life now, his family. Todd's voice came out slurred, pathetic. "I need to talk to Nicola." "Who is this?" Todd Murphy. "I need to talk to her." Silence. Then Damien's voice went cold and hard. "She asked you to stay away." "I know, but I need to tell her I'm sorry again. I need her to know that You need to stop calling." Damien's voice was firm but not cruel. Professional, like he was dealing with a difficult patient. "You're upsetting her. She cried after your meeting in the park. She's finally happy and stable. Don't ruin that because you feel guilty." "I saw Scott today. At school. He looks so much like her. He's so—" The silence that followed was dangerous and sharp. "You were at his school." Damien's voice had shifted now, protective anger replacing clinical patience. "You're watching my son's school. He's my son too." "No." The word came out like a gunshot. "You donated genetic material. That doesn't make you a father. A father is someone who shows up every single day, who changes diapers at 3 in the morning and sits through doctor appointments and reads the same bedtime story 50 times because his kid loves it, who loves unconditionally without hesitation or second-guessing. You're not that. You will never be that." Each word landed like a physical blow because they were completely, devastatingly true. "If I see you near Scott's school again, I'm calling the police. If you contact Nicola one more time, I'm getting a restraining order. Leave my family alone. They've been through enough because of you." The line went dead. Todd sat in his dark penthouse holding the phone, Damien's words echoing in empty rooms. My family. Not Todd's family. Damien's. Because Damien had earned that right through years of showing up while Todd had run away from it. The bottle of whiskey sat half empty on the coffee table. Todd reached for it again, but his hand stopped midway. Getting drunk wouldn't fix this. Nothing would fix this. He had destroyed his life, and now he had to live in the ruins he had created. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it with shaking hands, the screen blurring slightly from alcohol. This is Nicola. Damien told me you called drunk and mentioned being at Scott's school. I'm asking you one more time. Please leave us alone. I know you're hurting. I know you have regrets, but your pain doesn't give you the right to disrupt our peace. Scott is happy. I'm happy. Damien is good to both of us. If you ever cared about me, if you ever cared about our son, you will respect our boundaries and move on with your life. Below the message was a photo. Nicola, Damien, and Scott at the beach. Scott building an elaborate sandcastle, Damien kneeling beside him, helping dig moats. Nicola laughing at something one of them said, her head thrown back with genuine joy. A perfect moment of happiness and family wholeness. Todd stared at that photo for a long time, memorizing every detail. His son's smile, Nicola's joy, Damien's gentle presence in their lives. They were complete without him. They didn't need him. They were objectively better off without him complicating things. He typed back a single message with fumbling fingers. You're right. I'm sorry. I won't contact you again, I promise. Then he blocked her number before he could change his mind in another moment of weakness. Blocked Damien's number. Deleted the photos he had screenshotted from the investigator's report months ago. Removed every digital trace of them from his phone like maybe that would help him forget. It wouldn't. He knew that with absolute certainty, but it was all he had left to give them, his absence. The next morning, fighting through the worst hangover of his life, Todd called his lawyer and did something he should have done years ago. He set up an irrevocable trust fund for Scott. Money that would pay for college, medical expenses, whatever the boy needed throughout his life. But it was completely anonymous. Scott would never know it came from Todd, would never feel obligated or burdened by it, would just have resources available when he needed them. It wasn't enough, could never be enough to make up for everything, but it was something concrete he could do that wouldn't disrupt their lives. Then Todd packed a single bag and drove out of the city without telling anyone where he was going, just drove until buildings turned to fields, until he couldn't recognize any landmarks. He rented a cabin in a small mountain town hundreds of miles away and sat there in crushing silence trying to figure out how to live with himself. Lawrence found him anyway 3 weeks later, showing up at the cabin with groceries and concern etched deep in his weathered face. You can't just disappear, Lawrence said, unpacking food onto the dusty kitchen counter. Your mother is threatening to call police. She thinks you've done something drastic. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're sitting alone in the woods punishing yourself. Maybe I deserve to be punished. Lawrence stopped unpacking and looked at him directly. What you did was terrible, probably unforgivable, but destroying yourself now doesn't help anyone. Not Nicola, not Scott, not even you. Then what am I supposed to do? Tell me how I'm supposed to wake up every morning knowing my son is out there calling someone else father, and that's the right thing, that him not knowing me is what's best for him. You accept it. You accept that you can't fix this, that some mistakes are permanent, and then you find a way to live anyway, to be better than you were, to make sure you never hurt anyone like this again. Todd looked at his friend, this good man who had stuck by him despite everything. I don't know how to do that. No one does at first, but you figure it out anyway because the alternative is giving up completely. And despite everything, I don't think you're ready to do that. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the wind through pine trees outside. Then Lawrence added quietly, Your father sold the company. He's retiring to Florida. Says he wants nothing to do with you anymore. Your mother sided with him. Todd felt nothing at this news. His parents had always valued reputation over relationship. Of course they would cut him off to preserve their standing. "Let them go," Todd said. "They were never really there anyway." "What about you? What are you going to do?" Todd thought about Scott's smile at school pickup, about Nicola's laughter in that beach photo, about Damien's patient devotion to a child who wasn't biologically his, but was his in every way that mattered. "I don't know yet, but I can't keep doing this. Can't keep torturing myself by watching their lives from a distance. I need to actually move forward somehow. Then come back to the city. I have a connection at a non-profit that works with homeless families. They need someone to run their grant writing program. It's not glamorous. The pay is terrible, but it's meaningful work helping people who actually need it." Todd considered this, working to help other families even though he had destroyed his own. It felt appropriate somehow, penance disguised as employment. "Okay," he said, "I'll do it." It took another 2 weeks before Todd felt ready to return to the city. He found a modest apartment in a neighborhood he had never lived in before, somewhere with no memories attached. Started the non-profit job and threw himself into work with intensity that bordered on obsessive. He managed programs for homeless youth, spent 14-hour days writing grants and organizing resources, worked until he was too exhausted to think about anything except sleep. It helped slightly. Having purpose that wasn't connected to his own pain, helping other people's children since he couldn't help his own, and he kept his promise, didn't drive past Nicola's house, didn't look them up online, didn't break his word again. The anonymous trust fund deposited money monthly, but that was his only connection to Scott's life. It should have been enough, should have brought some peace. But every night Todd lay awake in his empty apartment and wondered if this was it. If this was what the rest of his life looked like, working to help strangers while his own son grew up calling someone else father. And he had no answer except the same one he'd had since the beginning. Yes, this was exactly what he deserved. Chapter 5. The call 3 months passed in this new rhythm of penance and isolation. Todd worked himself to exhaustion at the nonprofit, managing programs that helped families in crisis find housing and resources. The irony wasn't lost on him, spending his days helping keep families together when he had destroyed his own, but the work was meaningful, and he was good at it, channeling his self-hatred into something productive for once. He lived simply now. The penthouse was gone, sold to pay off debts from the company dissolution. His new apartment was small and sparse, just a bed and a desk and a kitchen he barely used. No photographs on the walls, no mementos, just empty space that matched the emptiness inside him. Lawrence visited occasionally, checking on him like someone monitoring a patient they weren't sure would survive. They didn't talk about Nicola or Scott. There was nothing left to say on that front. Todd had made his choice to stay away, and he was sticking to it, even if it felt like dying slowly from the inside out. Then Geneva called. Todd stared at her name on his phone for 3 rings, his heart suddenly racing. Geneva never called. She had made her position clear, stay away from her daughter and grandson or face consequences. So why was she calling now? He answered on the 4th ring. "Geneva?" Her voice was shaking in a way he had never heard before. "Scott is sick." The world tilted violently. "What?" "He's been in the hospital for 3 days. They can't figure out what's wrong. High fever that won't break. Trouble breathing. Fatigue so severe he can barely stay awake. Nicola hasn't left his side. Damien is working double shifts trying to pay for specialists who keep running tests that show nothing." Todd was already grabbing his keys, his hands suddenly cold and numb. "What hospital? What room number?" "Sacred Heart, Pediatric ICU, room 412. "But Todd, wait, you need to understand something. Nicola doesn't know I'm calling you. She would be furious if she found out. But I need you to listen to me very carefully." "I'm listening." "The doctors finally figured out what's wrong. Scott has a rare blood disorder. He needs a bone marrow transplant. They found a match through the registry, but the donor family is demanding $200,000 to go through with it. Insurance is calling it experimental and won't cover the full cost. We've scraped together maybe $70,000 between all of us. We're short $130,000 and the donor family says they won't wait. Todd was already in his car, phone on speaker as he started the engine. Give me the hospital administrator's contact information. I'll wire the money today, right now, whatever they need. Todd, wait. You can't just show up there. Nicola thinks she can handle this herself. She's been calling every charity, every foundation, trying to raise money. If she sees you just appear with cash, I don't care what she thinks of me. My son needs a transplant and I have the money. I'm coming. If you do this, there's no staying anonymous anymore. She'll know you paid for it. She'll know you were involved. Good. Let her know. Let her hate me for it if that's what she needs. As long as Scott gets what he needs, I don't care about anything else. He could hear Geneva breathing heavily on the other end of the line. You've changed. No. I just finally understand what matters. And it's not my pride or my comfort or my need to be forgiven. It's making sure my son survives. Geneva was quiet for a long moment. Sacred Heart Hospital, Pediatric ICU, room 412. I'll tell the staff you're coming to handle payment. But Todd, Damien is going to be there, and he's not going to be happy to see you. I know. I'll deal with it. He hung up and immediately called his bank while driving 20 miles over the speed limit toward the hospital. The bank manager tried to verify the legitimacy, tried to warn him about potential scams, but Todd didn't care about due diligence or protecting himself. If there was even a chance this was real, even a chance Scott needed this money, he would pay it 10 times over without hesitation. Wire $150,000 to Sacred Heart Hospital's account immediately, he told the manager. Mark it for Scott Carey's medical expenses. I want confirmation within the hour that it's been received. Sacred Heart Hospital looked exactly the same as it had years ago when Nicola had lain in an emergency room bed bleeding and terrified while Todd walked away. The same automatic doors, the same antiseptic smell, the same oppressive feeling that lives hung in balance here. Todd's hands shook as he crossed the lobby toward the elevators. Pediatric ICU, 4th floor. He found room 412 and stopped outside the door, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break through his chest. Through the small window in the door, he could see Nicola sitting beside a hospital bed. Scott lay there looking impossibly small and fragile, oxygen tubes in his nose, IV lines snaking from his thin arms, monitors beeping rhythmically beside him. Nicola held his hand and talked to him quietly, her face drawn with exhaustion and fear that aged her years. Damien stood on the other side of the bed, his hand on Nicola's shoulder. Both of them focused entirely on the child between them, a family in crisis, united in fear and love and determination to save their son. Todd raised his hand to knock, then hesitated. This was their moment, their family, their crisis. He had no right to intrude on this private pain. But Scott was his son too, biology aside, and he had money that could help when nothing else could. He knocked before he could talk himself out of it. Damien looked up first. His expression went from tired to furious in an instant when he recognized Todd through the window. He said something sharp to Nicola and moved toward the door, clearly intending to block Todd's entry and probably throw him out physically if necessary. But before Damien reached it, the door opened and Geneva stood there. "Let him in," she said firmly, her voice brooking no argument. "Geneva, what the hell?" Damien started. "I called him. Scott needs that transplant. Todd has the money. Let him in." Damien's jaw clenched so tight Todd could see muscles jumping, but he stepped aside. Todd entered the room and his entire world narrowed to the small figure in that hospital bed. Scott looked even more fragile than he had in the NICU photos from years ago, even more vulnerable than when Todd had watched him at school pickup. His breathing was labored despite the oxygen. His skin had a grayish pallor that made Todd's stomach turn violently. He was so young, so small, and he was fighting for his life while Todd had been sitting in his apartment wallowing in self-pity. Nicola stood up slowly, her eyes meeting Todd's across the room. She looked destroyed, hollow, like she had been crying for days and had no tears left to give. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was barely a whisper, scraped raw from emotion. "Geneva called me, told me about the transplant. I've already wired the money to the hospital. Whatever you need beyond that, I'll pay for it. Specialists, experimental treatments, anything. Just tell me what Scott needs." Something flickered in Nicola's expression. Not gratitude. Something far more complicated and painful. "We don't need your money," Damien said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "We can handle this ourselves." "You don't have time to handle it," Todd said, still looking at Nicola rather than Damien. "The donor family wants payment immediately or they walk away. I have it. Scott can have his transplant today if you stop arguing with me and let me help." Nicola's eyes filled with tears that started spilling down her cheeks. "Why are you doing this?" "Because he's my son, and I failed him once. I won't fail him again." "He is not your son," Damien cut in, protective anger radiating from every line of his body. "You don't get to call him that. You lost that right years ago." "Damien." Nicola's voice was soft but commanding in a way that cut through the tension. "Give us a moment, please." Damien looked like he wanted to refuse, like he wanted to physically remove Todd from this room and this situation. But after a long moment where he clearly wrestled with himself, he nodded stiffly and left the room. Geneva followed behind him, shooting Todd a look that was part warning and part something else he couldn't quite identify. The door closed with a quiet click that sounded final. Nicola and Todd stood on opposite sides of Scott's bed, years of damage and pain between them, their dying child, the only thing connecting them now. "The money is already transferred," Todd said, breaking the silence. "You don't have to talk to me. You don't have to thank me. I'll leave right now if that's what you want, but please let them do the transplant. Please let me give him this chance." Nicola looked down at Scott, her hand still holding his small fingers so gently it looked like she was afraid he might break. When she spoke, her voice was breaking apart. "I thought I could do this alone. Thought I could fix everything by myself like I've been doing for years. But I can't fix this. I can't make him better, no matter how hard I try or how much I love him." She looked up at Todd, devastation written across every feature. "I'm so scared. I'm terrified that I'm going to lose him." Todd's careful control shattered completely. He moved around the bed without thinking and pulled Nicola into his arms. She stiffened for a moment like every muscle in her body was rejecting this contact. Then she collapsed against his chest and sobbed like her soul was breaking into pieces too small to ever put back together. Todd held her and felt his own tears falling into her hair, felt years of walls crumbling under the weight of shared terror and grief. "He's strong," Todd whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "He's your son. He's fought before and won. He'll fight again and he'll survive this." "You don't know that. You can't promise that." "No, but I know he has you, and Damien, and Geneva, and people who love him more than anything fighting for him with everything they have. That has to count for something. That has to tip the scales in his favor." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other beside their son's bed, connected by grief and fear and the terrible knowledge that love was not always enough to save the people you cared about most. Finally, Nicola pulled away and wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. "Thank you for the money. I mean it. But after this, you need to stay gone. I can't handle having you in our lives. It hurts too much to have you here." "I know. I understand. I'll go. But I need you to promise me something first. Anything. Promise me you'll call if something changes. If there are complications with the transplant, if Scott gets worse, or if there's anything else he needs, promise me I'll know what's happening." Nicola hesitated, clearly torn between her need to protect herself and her terror for Scott. "I promise. Now go before Damien comes back and we have a fight in front of Scott." Todd looked down at his son one more time, bent and kissed the top of Scott's fevered head very gently, breathing in the smell of hospital soap and illness, and the particular scent that belonged only to this child he barely knew, but loved more than his own life. "Fight," he whispered against Scott's hair. "Please fight hard, Scott, you're stronger than you know." Then he walked out of that hospital room without looking back, even though every instinct screamed at him to stay. Damien was waiting in the hallway with arms crossed and expression murderous, a physical barrier between Todd and any further intrusion. "The money is in the hospital's account," Todd said before Damien could speak. "Do whatever you need to do for Scott. Get him the transplant. Save his life. I'm leaving now." He started to walk past, but Damien's voice stopped him cold. "Why?" Todd turned back. "Why what? Why pay for this? You could have just stayed gone. Could have let us struggle and drown and fail. Why come back now with money?" Todd met Damien's eyes directly, not flinching from the anger and suspicion he saw there. "Because no matter what role I have or don't have in Scott's life, he deserves every chance to survive. And if I can give him that chance, then I will. Every single time. No matter what it costs me." Something shifted in Damien's expression. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, just a slight softening, a recognition that maybe Todd was marginally less terrible than Damien had believed. "If he makes it through this," Damien said quietly, his voice rough with emotion he was trying to control, "it will be because of you. I need you to know that. I hate that it's true, but it is true." Todd nodded once, his throat too tight for words. Then he walked away before he could break down completely. Got in his car and drove back to his empty apartment while his son fought for his life in a hospital bed. 200 miles might as well have been 200,000 miles for how far away Todd felt, and he waited again, just like he always did, waiting for news, waiting for judgment, waiting to find out if his son would survive. Chapter 6. The Vigil. Scott survived the transplant surgery. Geneva called Todd 3 days later with the news. Her voice was thick with relief and exhaustion. The surgery had been successful. Scott's body was accepting the donor cells. He was still in critical condition, but the doctors were cautiously optimistic about his recovery. Each day he grew slightly stronger, slightly more stable. Todd sat on the floor of his apartment and wept with relief so intense it felt like being torn apart and reconstructed simultaneously. "Thank you for calling," he managed when he could speak again. "Please keep me updated. I need to know how he's doing." "I will." "And Todd? Nicola doesn't know I'm doing this. She thinks you're gone for good like you promised. I'm only telling you because you deserve to know your money saved him. But you need to stay away. Let them breathe and recover without complications." "I understand. I won't come back. Just tell me if anything changes." But Todd couldn't truly stay away. Not completely. He started making the drive back to the city twice a week, parking outside Sacred Heart Hospital for hours at a time. He never went inside, never tried to see Scott or Nicola or demand updates. Just sat there in his car, knowing his son was in that building somewhere, getting stronger every day, surviving against odds that should have destroyed him. Lawrence found out about these visits, of course. Lawrence always found out somehow. "This isn't healthy," Lawrence said one cold afternoon, sliding into the passenger seat of Todd's car, where it was parked across from the hospital. "You're torturing yourself for no reason." "I just need to be near him. He doesn't know you're here. This doesn't help him at all. It only hurts you." "I know, but I can't stop. I can't just sit in my apartment pretending he doesn't exist when he's right here fighting to survive." They sat in silence for a while, watching hospital staff come and go through automatic doors. Then Lawrence said quietly, "The non-profit wants to offer you a full-time director position, significant salary increase, good benefits, a real reason to stay in one place and build something positive with your life." "I don't want to build anything. I just want my son to be okay." "He is okay. He's recovering. The transplant worked. You gave him that gift. But now, you need to let him go live his life while you figure out how to live yours." Todd knew Lawrence was right, knew this obsessive watching was pathological and unhealthy, and solved nothing. But knowing something and changing it were different countries separated by an ocean he didn't know how to cross. Then one afternoon in late autumn, Todd was sitting in his usual spot outside the hospital when he saw them emerge through the doors. Nicola pushed Scott in a wheelchair, bundled in blankets despite the mild weather. Damien walked beside them, carrying balloons and a stuffed elephant. Scott looked thin and tired, but gloriously, impossibly alive. His eyes were clear, his skin had color again. He was smiling at something Nicola said. They were taking him home. He had survived. Todd watched them load Scott carefully into Damien's car, watched Nicola fuss over his seatbelt and blankets with the fierce protective love only mothers possess, watched Damien rest his hand on her back in a gesture of quiet support and partnership. Then they drove away toward their life together, and Todd started his car to follow at a distance, unable to help himself, even though he knew it crossed lines that should never be crossed. He knew it was wrong, knew it violated the promises he had made, but he followed them anyway, needing to see where they lived, what kind of home his son was going to, now that he was healthy again. They pulled up to a small house in a working-class neighborhood, not fancy or impressive, but clean and well-maintained. A bicycle in the driveway, flowers planted near the door that Geneva must have tended. Home in every sense that mattered. Damien carried Scott inside while Nicola gathered bags from the car. Geneva's car pulled up moments later and she rushed to help, her face bright with relief and joy and gratitude. Through the front window, Todd could see them settling Scott on a couch, piling pillows around him carefully, bringing him water and medication. A family taking care of their own, complete and functional, and not needing anything from the man sitting in his car down the street, watching like a ghost. Todd was about to drive away when Scott appeared in the window. The boy looked out at the street, his expression serious and thoughtful, and for one impossible moment, Todd thought maybe Scott saw him. Maybe somehow knew his biological father was out there watching and caring despite everything. Then Nicola appeared behind Scott and gently pulled him back from the window, probably worried about drafts or overexertion after surgery. The curtains closed, blocking Todd's view. Todd sat there for another hour before finally driving back to his cabin. The image of that house burned into his mind forever. That was where his son would grow up now that he had survived, where he would learn to ride that bicycle in the driveway, where he would do homework at the kitchen table and celebrate birthdays and become whoever he was meant to be. And Todd would not be part of any of it. That was the deal. That was what staying away meant. 6 months crawled past. Todd accepted the non-profit director position Lawrence had mentioned, took an apartment in the city proper, closer to work, but still far enough from Nicola's neighborhood that he wouldn't accidentally run into them. Threw himself into his job with intensity that bordered on manic desperation. He managed programs for homeless youth, spent 14-hour days writing grants and organizing resources, worked until he was too exhausted to think about anything except sleep. It helped slightly. Having purpose disconnected from his own pain. Helping other people's children since he could never help his own beyond anonymous financial support. Then Geneva called again. "He's doing well," she said without preamble. "Fully recovered. Doctor says he can return to all normal activities. Nicola wanted you to know that your money gave him his life back." That's all I needed to hear. Thank you for telling me. There's something else. Geneva paused, clearly uncomfortable. Nicola and Damien are getting married next month. Small ceremony at Riverside Community Center. She specifically asked me not to tell you, but I thought you should know anyway. Todd closed his eyes and leaned back in his desk chair. Of course they were getting married. Damien had proven himself beyond any possible doubt. Had been there through the worst crisis imaginable and never wavered. He deserved to marry Nicola. deserved to legally become Scott's father. "Thank you for telling me," Todd said. "Tell Nicola I hope she's very happy, and I mean that sincerely. Are you okay?" "No, but I will be eventually. Maybe." After Geneva hung up, Todd sat at his desk until his assistant knocked to remind him about a donor meeting. He went through the motions, gave his presentation, made decisions about budget allocations, acted like a functional human being even though he felt hollowed out inside. That night he drove past Nicola's house without planning to and saw wedding decorations being delivered. Saw Nicola and Damien on the porch laughing about something while they unpacked boxes. Saw Scott run outside and hug both of them, looking healthy and whole and exactly where he should be. Todd drove away before anyone could notice him and went to a grief support group meeting even though his loss wasn't death. It was the living death of watching your child thrive without you, of knowing you had saved his life but lost any right to be part of it. "My son is getting a new father next month," Todd told the group that night. "Legally this time, and I'm the reason he needs one because I abandoned them years ago. Then I paid for his medical treatment when he almost died. Now I have to watch him grow up happy in a family I destroyed and then helped save from a distance. How do you live with that?" No one had answers. They never did at grief groups. But they listened with understanding born from their own losses, and listening was infinitely better than the silence of his apartment. The wedding day arrived. Todd told himself he would not drive past, would not torture himself by witnessing their happiness, but of course he did, because he had no self-control where they were concerned. He parked down the street from Riverside Community Center and watched guests arrive. Saw Geneva in a beautiful dress, her face radiant with joy. Saw friends and family file in with gifts and warm wishes. Saw Scott in a tiny suit that made Todd's heart crack, the boy's role as ring bearer evident from the small pillow he carried carefully. Then he saw Nicola. She wore a simple white dress, nothing extravagant or ostentatious, but she was the most beautiful thing Todd had ever seen. Damien waited at the entrance in his dress uniform, his face lit with joy when he saw her approaching. They embraced, kissed deeply, disappeared inside together toward vows and promises, and a future Todd would never be part of. Todd sat in his car, watching the door close behind them, and knew this was truly the end. Nicola was married now. Scott had a legal father. The family was complete and permanent and sealed against any intrusion Todd might have contemplated. He should have driven away immediately, should have let them have their day without his ghost haunting the periphery like some pathetic specter. Instead, he got out of his car and walked toward the community center, not to go inside, just to stand outside near the open windows and listen to the ceremony through them, to hear Nicola's voice saying vows to someone who deserved her, to witness from a safe distance the happiness he had made possible by leaving. The ceremony was short and genuine and full of warmth, lots of laughter from guests who clearly loved this couple. Scott's voice piping up at one point, with something that made everyone chuckle affectionately. Then music and enthusiastic applause as the couple was pronounced married. Todd turned to leave before anyone came outside for photographs, but a hand on his shoulder stopped him. He spun around and found himself face to face with Damien. The new groom stood there in his dress uniform, his expression unreadable and complex. They stared at each other for a long moment. Todd waited for rage, for accusations, for the confrontation he probably deserved for being here uninvited. Instead, Damien extended his hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice steady despite the emotion underneath. "For the transplant, for saving my son's life. My son, not our son, not even Scott's name, my son, claiming ownership clearly, establishing boundaries firmly." Todd shook Damien's hand, feeling the strength in that grip. "He's your son. You earned that right every single day. I just helped make sure he survived to grow up with you." Damien's grip tightened slightly, almost painfully. "If I ever see you near my family again without explicit permission, we will have a very different conversation than this one. But today I wanted to say thank you. You gave me the greatest gift possible when you paid for that transplant. You gave me my son's future. You're welcome, and congratulations on your marriage. You both deserve every happiness." Damien nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and dismissal simultaneously. Then he turned and went back inside where his wife and son waited for him, where his life was waiting, where Todd could never belong. Todd walked back to his car and drove to his empty apartment and understood with perfect clarity that this chapter was permanently closed now. Nicola was married. Scott was healthy and happy. They didn't need Todd, didn't want Todd. And that was exactly as it should be. He had saved his son's life, had given him a chance to grow up healthy and loved. That would have to be enough, even though it felt like nowhere near enough at all. Chapter 7. The Letter. 2 years passed in a blur of work and routine. Todd built a life that functioned. His non-profit work expanded until he was running multiple programs. He dated occasionally, though nothing lasted beyond a few months. He volunteered at a children's hospital on weekends, reading to kids in the oncology ward. He thought about Scott every day, but stopped the obsessive drive-bys. The anonymous trust fund continued its monthly deposits. That was his only connection now. Then a letter arrived that changed everything. Todd almost missed it among the bills. But there was his name in careful, wobbly handwriting. The return address was Nicola's house. His hands shook as he opened it. "Dear Todd, my name is Scott. My mum says you are my biological father. I didn't know about you until last week when I asked why my birth certificate has a different last name than my dad's. She told me the whole story, about how you and her were together when she got pregnant, about how you left, about how you paid for my transplant when I was sick. I've been thinking about this a lot. My dad, Damien, said I should do whatever feels right. He knows he's my real dad. But he said it's okay if I'm curious about where I came from. So I guess I am curious. I don't understand why you left. Mom says you were scared. I'm 8 and even I know that's a bad reason to leave someone. But you also saved my life. The doctor said I would have died without the transplant. Would you want to meet me? Not be my dad or anything. Damien is my dad. But maybe just talk. I have questions. Do I look like you? Do we have stuff in common? Are you sorry you left? You don't have to write back. Mom says I shouldn't get my hopes up. But I wanted to ask. Scott." Todd read the letter 5 times, hands trembling. His 8-year-old son had written to him, had questions, wanted to meet. He called Geneva. "Did you know about this?" he asked. "The letter?" "Yes." Scott wanted to write. Nicola tried to talk him out of it, but Damien said it was Scott's choice. "What do they want from me?" Geneva was quiet. "Nicola is terrified you'll hurt Scott, but she's dealing with the fact that you saved his life. Damien isn't threatened. He just wants what's best for Scott. And Scott is curious." "What do I do? Can you see Scott without trying to take a role you don't have? Can you answer his questions honestly? Can you accept this might be one meeting and nothing more?" "I can do those things. Then write him back. But if you hurt that boy, I will make you regret it." Todd sat down to write. "Dear Scott, thank you for your letter. I can't tell you how much it means. You ask if I want to meet you, and the answer is yes. But I want to be honest first. I did leave your mother when she needed me. I was scared and selfish and made the worst choice of my life. Your mother deserved better. You deserved better. Damien is your real dad in every way that counts. The man who shows up every day, who loves you, who was there when you were sick. That's what makes someone a father. I gave you DNA, but he gave you everything else. I would be honored to meet you and answer your questions. But only if your mom and Damien are comfortable, and only if you understand I'm not trying to replace Damien or change your family. You ask if you look like me. You have my eyes, but your mom's smile. I don't know if we like the same things, but I'd love to find out. Yes, I am sorry I left. More sorry than I can explain. Leaving your mom and missing you is my biggest regret. You were never a mistake. You were always wanted. I was just too much of a coward to stay. If your mom and Damien say it's okay, I would very much like to meet you. Todd." He sent the letter immediately, then waited. 2 weeks later, a response arrived. From Nicola. "Todd, Scott showed me your letter. I've read it 50 times trying to decide if you mean it. Damien and I talked for a long time. He's less worried than I am. He says Scott is old enough to understand complex truths and that meeting you might help him. So against my better judgment, we're agreeing to one meeting. Supervised, public location. Here are the rules. 1. You don't get to call yourself Scott's father. You are Todd. 2. You answer questions honestly, but age appropriately. 3. If Scott seems uncomfortable, we leave immediately. 4. This is one meeting, might be the only one. 5. No expensive gifts trying to buy affection. 6. Remember Damien and I are his parents. If you agree, we'll meet next Saturday at Riverside Park at 2 p.m. We'll both be there. If you can't agree or can't handle this, write back now. Don't waste our time or hurt my son. Nicola." Todd read the rules 3 times. Each one was reasonable. Each reminded him of his place, essentially no place at all. He wrote back immediately, "I agree to every rule. I will see you Saturday at 2 p.m. Thank you for this chance." Then he waited for Saturday with anticipation and dread. Chapter 8. The First Meeting. Todd arrived at Riverside Park 45 minutes early, his stomach in knots. He had changed his outfit 4 times, finally settling on jeans and a casual button-down. Nothing too formal, nothing too sloppy. He wanted to look approachable. The north entrance was quiet. A few joggers passed. An elderly couple walked their dog. Normal weekend activity, while Todd's world balanced on what happened next. He sat on the bench where he had met Nicola years ago and tried to control his breathing. Then he saw them approaching. Scott walked between Nicola and Damien, holding both their hands. He wore a superhero t-shirt and jeans with grass stains. His curls fell into his eyes. He was taller than Todd expected, stronger looking, the fragile hospital child replaced by a healthy boy. Todd stood, legs unsteady. They stopped 10 feet away. Damien's hand rested on Scott's shoulder. Nicola's grip was tight. Scott stared at Todd with curiosity. "You look different than I thought." "Yeah? How did you think I'd look?" "Bigger, maybe. Meaner." "I'm not mean, just made bad choices." Scott considered this, then stepped forward. "Mom says I have your eyes." "You do, same color, same shape. Do I look like you when you were little?" Todd showed Scott a childhood photo. Scott leaned in, comparing. "We kind of do look the same," Scott observed. "That's weird." "Genetics are pretty cool." Scott looked up seriously. "Why did you leave my mom?" The question cut through everything. Todd glanced at Nicola, who nodded. "I was scared," Todd said, crouching to Scott's level. "Your mom was pregnant and I knew my life would change. I wasn't ready to be brave, so I ran. It was the worst thing I ever did. I hurt your mom and missed knowing you." "That was mean." "Yes, it was. But you paid for my transplant." "I did. Because even though I wasn't there before, I couldn't stand you being sick when I could help. You deserved to live." Scott processed this. "My dad says people make mistakes, but can try to do better. Is that what you did?" "I'm trying, but trying doesn't erase the mistakes. Your mom and Damien were there every day. I just showed up once with money." "Money is important, though. Mom cried about it when I was sick." Nicola made a small sound. Damien's hand tightened on her shoulder. "Your mom is very strong," Todd said. "She kept you safe even when it was hard. That's real love, showing up every day. Like my dad does." "Exactly like Damien does." Scott glanced at Damien, who smiled encouragingly, then looked back at Todd. "Can I ask something else?" "Anything." "Do you wish you could be my dad? My real dad?" Todd's heart broke. He looked at this beautiful boy and knew he could lie. But Scott deserved honesty. "Part of me wishes I could have been," Todd said carefully, "but that's my guilt talking, not what's best for you. Damien is your real dad. He earned that every day. I gave you genetics, but he gave you everything else. So no, I don't wish I could replace him. I just wish I'd been brave enough to be there from the start." Scott seemed satisfied. He turned to Nicola. "Can I show him my scar?" Nicola hesitated, then nodded. Scott lifted his shirt, revealing the surgical scar. "This is from the transplant. It doesn't hurt, but sometimes it itches." Todd stared at that scar, evidence of how close he'd come to losing his son. "It healed really well," Todd managed. "The doctors said I was brave. I tried not to cry even though I was scared." "Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. Being brave means doing hard things when you're scared. You are very brave." Scott dropped his shirt and looked at Todd intently. "If you could go back, would you stay? Would you not leave?" Nicola made a protest, but Scott waited for the answer. "Yes," Todd said simply. "If I could go back, I would never have left. I would have been there when you were born. I would have done everything differently. But I can't go back. I can only try to be better now." "Okay." Scott turned to his parents. "I'm ready to go now." Just like that. Meeting over. Scott had his answers. "Thank you for meeting me," Todd said. "You're welcome. Maybe we can do this again sometime, but not a lot." Before Todd could respond, Scott walked back and took his parents' hands. They turned to leave. Damien glanced back and mouthed, "Thank you." Then they were gone. Todd sat back down and cried quietly, releasing years of tension. He had met his son, answered questions honestly, seen Scott healthy and loved. It was more than he deserved. When he finally composed himself, he found Nicola waiting by his car. She stood with arms crossed. "That went better than expected. Scott is amazing. You and Damien did an incredible job." "Don't," she said sharply. "Don't compliment me like you had any part in who he became. You showed up for one conversation. I know I wasn't. You were being gracious, and you succeeded today. Scott likes you, which terrifies me." "Why?" "Because what if he wants more time with you? What if you become this thing that complicates everything?" Todd absorbed this. "What do you want from me?" "What I want is for you to have stayed years ago. But I can't have that. So I need you to understand that if you get more time with Scott, it's a privilege, not a right." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because Scott wants to see you again. He said so in the car. He wants monthly meetings. Damien said we should allow it. But I'm terrified you'll break his heart." "I won't." "You can't promise that. Your track record is terrible." She was right. "Then what do you want me to do?" Nicola stared at him. Then her shoulders sagged. "Show up," she said. "Every time Scott wants to see you, you show up. You don't cancel. And if you ever can't do that, tell me immediately so I can prepare him." "I can do that. I will. We'll see. Next month. Same place, same rules. Don't be late." She walked away. Todd stood there, understanding he'd been given something precious and fragile. It wasn't enough, would never be enough, but it was more than he deserved. And he would show up. Every time. Until Scott didn't want to see him, or until Todd's last breath. Chapter 9. The Pattern. 10 months passed in a rhythm Todd had never experienced. Structured connection with rigid boundaries that both sustained and devastated him. Once a month he met Scott at Riverside Park, always supervised, always with Nicola and Damien present, but gradually giving them space as Todd proved reliable. The meeting started at 30 minutes, but slowly expanded to an hour, sometimes 2 when Scott was engaged. Todd learned his son in fragments. Scott loved dinosaurs but only herbivores because plant eaters had to be smart to survive, which is cooler. He was excellent at math but struggled with reading. He had Nicola's competitive streak. He bit his lower lip when concentrating exactly like Todd did. They built things together, paper airplanes, Lego structures Scott designed, a wooden birdhouse Scott later installed in Damien's backyard, small projects that gave them something to do while talking. Scott asked questions constantly about Todd's childhood, his job helping homeless families, whether he had other kids, no, just you, whether he had a wife, no, whether he was lonely, yes, but that's my fault. Todd answered honestly, never sugarcoating. Slowly, something resembling a relationship formed, not father and son. Scott had a father, but something else neither had words for. The 10th meeting was in late autumn. Scott was 9, taller and more confident. They sat throwing bread to ducks while Nicola and Damien watched from nearby. "Can I tell you something?" Scott asked seriously. "Always?" "Kids at school made fun of me for having 2 dads. They said it was weird." Todd's chest tightened. "What did you say?" "I said my family is normal for me. Damien is my real dad and you're my biological dad. That's just how it is." Scott paused. "But it made me wonder if people think it's weird." "Do you think it's weird?" Scott considered it. "Sometimes. Like family tree projects at school, or when doctors ask about medical history. But mostly it feels normal." "Normal is different for everyone. Your normal includes a biological father who made mistakes and a real father who shows up daily. That's not weird, that's your story. My friend Tyler has 2 moms. He says families come in different types. Tyler sounds smart. He is. He's better at soccer than me." Scott threw the last bread. "Can I ask something weird?" "Yeah. Do you ever wish you could come to my soccer games? Not to replace my dad, just to watch." Todd's throat closed. He glanced at Nicola, who had gone still. "Honestly, yes. I wish I could watch you play and see your plays and be part of your daily life, but I understand why that can't happen. Your life is with your mom and Damien. I'm just someone you know sometimes. I don't get to be more. But you want to be." It wasn't a question. Scott was too perceptive. "Yes," Todd admitted. "I want more than I'm allowed. But what I want doesn't matter. What matters is what's best for you. And that's the family you have." Scott nodded, processing. Then, "Mom and Damien were fighting about you." "What?" "I heard them. They thought I was asleep. Damien said you've earned more time with me, that you've been showing up for almost a year and maybe I should spend time with you without them watching. Mom said no, that she doesn't trust you. They got loud." Todd felt sick. "I'm sorry they're fighting because of me. I know. But maybe my dad is right. You've come every month, never late, never cancelled. You answer hard questions. Maybe Mom should trust you a little. Your mom has every reason not to trust me. I destroyed that trust long ago. But people can change. You changed. You're not the same person who left." Todd wanted desperately to believe that. "Your mom will decide. Whatever she decides, I'll respect, even if it means stopping these meetings." Scott's eyes widened. "You'd stop seeing me if Mom said?" "If your mom truly believed it was best, yes. She knows you better than I ever will." Scott was quiet, kicking dirt. "I don't want to stop seeing you. Is that okay?" The question broke Todd. This child asking permission to want a relationship with his biological father. "It's more than okay," Todd said. "It means everything to me." They sat in silence. Then Nicola called time. Scott stood and hugged Todd. Quick, awkward, genuine. "See you next month. See you next month." Todd watched them leave. His phone buzzed. "Nicola, we need to talk. Come to the house tomorrow at noon. Just you." Todd's stomach dropped. She was ending this. He responded, "I'll be there." That night, Todd lay awake, bracing for loss. Chapter 10. The beginning. Todd arrived at Nicola's house at 11:45, too nervous to risk being late. He walked up the pathway, noting small details. Scott's bicycle against the garage, Damien's work boots on the porch, a basketball hoop with a worn net. He knocked with shaking hands. Damien answered, expression neutral. "She's in the kitchen. I'll give you privacy." He left, heading upstairs and closing a door firmly. Nicola stood at the counter pouring coffee, her back to him. Morning light caught her profile, revealing new lines around her eyes. "Sit," she said without turning. Todd sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped to hide their trembling. Nicola brought 2 mugs and sat across from him. For a long moment she just stared. "Scott told you Damien and I fought about you," she said finally. "He mentioned it. I'm sorry. I never meant to cause problems in your marriage." "You never mean to cause problems. You just exist, and everything gets complicated." She sipped coffee deliberately. "Damien thinks I'm being too controlling. He says you've proven yourself over 10 months and that Scott benefits from knowing you." "What do you think?" Nicola's jaw tightened. "I think I spent years building a life where I didn't have to worry about you disrupting everything. Where Scott had stability and one clear father figure. Then you came back and now everything is complicated. I can stop the meetings, if that's what you need." "That's exactly what Damien said you'd say, but I don't want you to just agree with me. I want you to tell me what you want." Todd met her eyes. "I want more time with Scott. I want to go to his soccer games. I want to help with homework. I want to be part of his life in some real way instead of monthly park meetings. I want to know him and have him know me." "And what are you willing to give up for that?" "Anything." "Would you move if we asked? If we said your presence makes things too complicated?" Todd's chest tightened. "If you truly believed it was best for Scott, yes." "Would you sign documents promising you'll never seek custody or disrupt his relationship with Damien?" "Yes, immediately." "Would you tell a judge that Damien is Scott's father in every way that counts?" "Yes, without hesitation." Nicola stared at him, searching for lies. Found none. "Damien wants to let you take Scott for supervised outings. Nothing overnight, nothing extended, but actual time doing normal activities instead of awkward park meetings." Hope flickered, but Todd forced it down. "What do you want?" "I want to protect my son from being hurt, from getting attached and then having you disappear when things get hard." "I won't disappear." "You can't promise that. Life happens, jobs change, people move. You can't promise forever." "No," Todd agreed, "but I can promise I'll tell you immediately if anything changes, that I'll never vanish without explanation, that if I can't be there, I'll give you warning so it doesn't destroy him." Nicola's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "I hate that I have to trust you. I hate that my son wants to know you. I hate that you saved his life because it means I can't cut you out. I hate all of it." "I know. But I see you've changed, that you show up, that you're honest even when it makes you look terrible, that you respect Damien. I see all that and don't know what to do with it." Todd waited, letting her work through this. "Here's what's happening," Nicola said, voice steady despite tears. "You can take Scott to the Science Museum next Saturday, 2 hours. Damien supervises. If that goes well, maybe we try other things. Movies, lunch, normal activities. But the first time you're late, first time you cancel without excellent reason, first time Scott comes home upset because of you, we go back to monthly park meetings. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear. And you don't get to call yourself his father. You are Todd, his biological dad if he asks, but just Todd. Understood?" "Completely understood." Nicola wiped her eyes. "I'm doing this for Scott, not you. He deserves to know where he comes from. But if you hurt him, I will make you regret it." "I would deserve it." She stood. Todd stood too. "Saturday, 10 a.m. Children's Science Museum. Do not be late." "I'll be there at 9:45. Something flickered in her expression, almost amusement. "Of course you will." Todd turned to leave, but Nicola's voice stopped him. "Todd?" He looked back. "Thank you for the transplant. I've never properly said that. You saved Scott's life. I'll always be grateful for that, even if I can't forgive everything else." Todd nodded, not trusting his voice. That Saturday, Todd arrived at 9:45. Damien pulled up at 9:50 with Scott, who bounded out excitedly. "We're going to see dinosaurs," Scott announced. "I heard. You ready?" "So ready." Damien extended his hand. They shook, silent understanding passing between them. 2 hours, Damien said. "I'll be here, but I'll keep distance. But I'm watching. I would expect nothing less." Inside, Scott was pure enthusiasm, dragging Todd from exhibit to exhibit, reading every plaque, asking endless questions. Todd soaked in every moment, Scott's hand tugging him forward, his laugh at interactive displays, how he looked up constantly to make sure Todd was paying attention. At one point, Scott stopped at a genetics display. "This is like us. You gave me half my genes and Mom gave me the other half." "That's right. But my dad gave me everything else." "Yes, he did." Scott looked up seriously. "I'm glad I have all three of you. Is that weird?" "No, that's not weird at all." Near the end, they sat in the cafe sharing fries. Scott pulled out a school project. "I made this family tree," he said, unfolding it carefully. "I wanted to show you." 2 branches at the top. One had Nicola's name with her parents and grandparents. The other had Todd's name with a photo Scott must have found online. Below both, Scott's name with his photo. But there was also a decorated box to the side with Damien's photo and a note. "Dad, not biological, but real." "What do you think?" Scott asked nervously. Todd stared at that tree. His name included, Damien's special designation, Scott's careful attempt to make room for everyone. "I think it's absolutely perfect," Todd said, voice catching. "You did an amazing job." "Some kids asked why I had 2 dads. I said families can be different shapes. My teacher said that was a good answer." "Your teacher was right." When their time ended, Damien appeared and Scott ran to him. "Dad, we saw the biggest dinosaur ever, and Todd bought me a pterodactyl book." Damien caught him easily, glancing at Todd with what might have been approval. "Sounds like you had fun." "So much fun. Can we do it again?" "We'll see." Before leaving, Scott turned back. "Thanks for today. I'll see you again soon, right?" "Right." Todd watched them walk away, Scott chattering to Damien, Damien listening with complete attention. A father and son heading home. And for the first time, Todd didn't feel destroyed watching them leave, because he would see Scott again, not as much as he wanted, never as much, but enough. Enough to know his son, enough to watch him grow, enough to be part of the story, even if never the hero. That evening, Nicola texted, "Scott hasn't stopped talking about the museum. Same time next month." Todd responded immediately, "I'll be there." And he would be. Every month, every outing, every moment Scott was willing to share. Because that was what showing up looked like. Not grand gestures or dramatic redemption, just consistent presence. Day after day, month after month, building trust one small moment at a time. It wasn't the ending Todd would have written. He wasn't forgiven, wasn't Scott's father, wasn't part of Nicola's life beyond these negotiations, but he was here, and Scott knew him, and that would have to be enough, because sometimes the best you could do was accept you had destroyed something precious and spend the rest of your life grateful for whatever small pieces you were allowed to hold. The end.